All right, and welcome back to BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. Drive Safe Dave here, running the man in the news desk all by myself today. I'm a little bit selfish. I got it all under control right here as Sir Rick is out there on assignment. But I'll tell you, we've got three fantastic panelists today to talk to you a little bit about. I mean, I'm not talking about just normal panelists. I'm talking about geniuses in the industry, especially when it comes to technology. I'm going to bring them in right now. Bryce, bring all our panelists in, please. There you go. All right, we got Kary, Ed, and Chris. Kary, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself first, who you are and who you're with.
Sure thing. Well, thanks so much for having me here. Drive safe, Dave. I'm sad to miss Sir Rick, but good to be here. I'm going to one of those college games this weekend. I'm going to Notre Dame, Stanford, so go Irish. And anyway, I am with Trucker Tools, and we are the leading free app for life on the road for drivers, focused especially on owner-operators and small carriers. We've been downloaded 2 million times and allow you to become a digital carrier, have all the tools you need to find, book, track freight, and find truck parking, actually, just like you were talking about, without ever having to pick up the phone. We've also do a lot of work on the brokerage side, helping them improve and automate load tracking and freight matching and digital booking.
All right, Ed, you're up next. Ed, you're muted. Sorry.
Think I'd have this down in 2022 by now.
That happens in every meeting. And you know what? In our meetings around here, you get picked on. I'm just letting you know, we won't do it on this show, but if you're here in this office and you're muted and try to talk, you get picked on. But we won't do it here today, but I give you fair warning for next time. But go ahead and introduce yourself, Ed.
Yeah, sorry, Dave. I got to be that guy. Started my career off at Echo, moved on to Redwood, and then lastly, leading sales efforts at Transfix. And very similarly to what Kary described, Trucker Tools, we are trying to digitize the transaction. Slightly different market. We really aim to digitize the transaction with the mid-market trucking companies and connect those folks to the mid-market brokers. That could mean through their user interface, through integrations, giving the brokers the right tools to reach out to the carriers, but really focusing on mid-market to mid-market transactions.
Awesome. All right, and Chris, not the least for last, but you're up next.
Man, Dave, I got to say, I felt like I was on a real TV show there, just watching the intro come in. You guys have come a long way. So, no, awesome to see that. I'm Chris Arredondo, co-founder and VP of pretty much everything customer related here at Cargo Chief. I started my career early on at the boot camp of freight, I guess you could call it, at C.H. Robinson. Booked a ton of freight, moved on to XPO. Found a niche there on the sell side, went to coverage, ops manager, ran a brokerage, did it all, decided to come and build out some freight tech. So here at Cargo Chief, we really about enhancing and enriching that procurement process through automation, layered digital freight matching, from everything from capacity sourcing just to solve the sporadicness and the chaotic nature of the business and the industry. And then just to give you a better price to quote accurately and win more business. So that's pretty much it.
You know, I'll tell you, y'all are all in a niche in the industry that relies heavily on data. I mean, as you do this, I mean, I can tell you back in the day, data was something that you got way after the fact. It was so ex post facto. It came in after everybody turned in their logs and after everybody turned in their receipts and after everybody turned in their paperwork. It was weeks, if not months, to procure any real data to make decisions on. And now, obviously, as we talk about it, data has become, there's so much of it. It is dumped on us daily. How is it affected? How is it that you, in your industry, how are you impacted by data now like it's never been before? Kary, you want to tell us?
Absolutely. We rely on data for everything we do at Trucker Tools. So both on the carrier and the driver side, we're in the business of making you a more efficient operator, automating those manual tasks that we have a lot of information on and are able to kind of set and forget so that you can be focused on things. If you're a driver on the road, driving safely, not thinking about, hey, where am I going to get my next load? Where am I going to park my truck? Or a broker, if you're in the office, not sending out those emails that you always know to send to these 5 carriers every Tuesday morning for a lane from Dallas to Atlanta. So what we're doing is just constantly collecting information on the activity on our platform, where drivers are heading, what lanes they're indicating interest in, and then using that to match on the other side of the marketplace with our brokerages, where we see they have, lanes, or sorry, they have loads that need to run and match those lanes that we have in our carrier network, so that we can just create matches and create efficiency, where in the past that information would have been revealed slowly over time via phone calls, emails. Right now, we can just completely run that in the background using all of that data and free both sides of the marketplace up to focus on bigger problems, problem solving, and staying safe out there.
And as you talk about that, Ed, why don't you speak to how it's affecting you? Because obviously you have knowledge in the industry, come into the industry. How are you seeing a huge change in what you do every day with data?
Yeah, well, I think the piece that you touched on about getting data after the fact, I think probably, like, just generically speaking, the biggest innovation in the last couple of years has been acquiring data via integrations. And it's something that most TMSs never had the ability to do, whether you're on the shipper, broker, or carrier side. It doesn't matter. Most of these folks have never done third-party integrations before. All of the integrations that they've done have really meant to facilitate the immediate needs of their customer and not necessarily allow these third-party vendors to come in, and unless you're a Triumph Pay or in the factoring space or in the tracking space. But this new category of digital bookings and connectivity is going to be propelled exponentially by the quality of integrations that these TMSs are innovating and finally deciding to do. But with that, the byproduct is capturing a lot more data than we have ever had access to. So I think just, again, generally speaking, we're starting to see data in terms of what carriers are going where they're going to be ahead of time. We've talked about predictive capacity for a really long time in this industry, and typically that has been siloed to one organization. I think with the types of companies on this panel, we're starting to see transactions and where carriers will be a little bit further out in time, but also pricing data and a lot of other variables that I'm probably neglecting to mention. But I think the integration is probably key there.
Chris, and as we're talking, you obviously have a lengthy term in the industry. Well, I think a lot of this data, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of this data started to get dumping on us when the integration of the ELD came about, and seeing not only where the truck is at, where it's going to be, and all of this other stuff that was all surrounded by the log, but it turned into something more, right? I mean, now we have firsthand knowledge of where the trucks are, what they're doing, and we can predict for the customers, right? I mean, how does that information, how did that one little piece that was all about the electronic log really make a genuine difference in the industry?
It's really just the speed, right? I think you think of a lot of tools out there, or just in the old days. I mean, tracking loads with an index card and moving it across, like, that takes a lot of time, right? And like then right, and interpreting and yelling at someone across the room, like, hey, yeah, load's picked up, like, my index card is over here, come look at it. And like that it's the speed and the rapidness of like EDI and API that's allowed things to just be more streamlined. And I think when you were talking about data, like, everyone has data, and this EDI and API allowed for a lot more of it and a lot more consumption. But it's really like, is it actionable? Right. And then I think the really interesting thing is the evolution of interpretation of that data. Everybody has it, but it really depends on, tech companies like us, or just even somebody there in your own shop, to be able to interpret it and relay it to your team, so that it can be useful to know like what trucks are coming up, what the price is going to be tomorrow or next week, and then even is there parking available, or like where is my truck, right? So all this data together, it's a really just interesting to see the evolution of interpretation, I'd say.
Yeah, I know. And as you talk about, I'll tell you that's funny when you talked about index cards. I remember a load. By the way, I just want to let everybody, I'm older. The load board used to be a little thing in the truck stop where you pulled a piece of paper off of a board that was where the loads were. That's where the load board actually originated from, not from something you got online. So I just wanted y'all to know that's actually where that term first came from. But I'll tell you, as you talk, Kary, have you found that as you dig deeper and as you offer up a service, isn't it funny how it opens up way more channels of what else you might need or what else the customer might need? I mean, like you were talking about these different things, that's not how it all started, right? They just keep starting to add on, right? The data just gets there and you're like, oh my goodness, I've got to do something else with it.
Yeah, I think your point about the ELDs is a very good one, in that opened up kind of a whole new can of worms of opportunity, or Pandora's box of opportunity for us to dig into. And it's been a big focus of ours at Trucker Tools. We were largely a mobile tracking provider, and over the last couple of years, ELDs have just completely changed the tracking game. So I think the way, we think about data is that, to Ed's point, we're only as strong as kind of the quality that we're getting via integration with our customers, but also that whenever we are developing a new product based on the data we have, we think through, how is a customer actually going to be using this in action? We talk to brokerages all day long. We talk to our carrier customers. Is this going to be something that they're going to be able to make a decision on, and an intelligent decision on, or is it just overwhelming them with information that actually might be presenting more noise than anything that they can use in kind of a real world context?
You find that as you're doing this, and I'll just stick to this with you, Ed. Let me ask you, when you face this, how are we going to go forward in this? Looking at all of this, and I know where we are now, how are we going to breed? We're going to get even more and more data dumped in here. How are we going to facilitate this?
We get to make fun of Ed now.
I know.
Ed, I'm fixing to write you a ticket. I'm fixing to get you. You're doing that to me. And, we're all just leaning forward and.
I wish I could even say it was a joke and that I'm just messing with you, but it's not. I think it probably depends on what vertical we're talking about. There's a lot of different data coming across all of these different verticals, and some of it is very legacy. We're talking about ELD and tracking data and the consumption and how that data is actionable. And I think one of the most obvious examples is nobody wants to look at a map and see where their 500 shipments are, but they do want to know when those 3 are going to be late. And we're going to take data and turn it into something that is actionable and that you could be proactive and start alerting your customers that affect the supply chain downstream. So I think frankly, we'll probably see, with the amount of money that has come into the space over the last 5 to 7 years, I think we'll probably see some folks that have not really been able to figure out how to make that data actionable and have not been able to provide real value to their customers. And I think in the next couple of years, we'll probably separate those folks who are truly value add versus the folks that haven't quite been able to figure that out yet. So I know it's a little bit more on the company level, but I think the biggest advancement that I see in the industry is really around the folks that have figured out how to add value and kind of weeding out some of the bad actors.
I appreciate that. And here's where BCB Live steps into all of this information that y'all are throwing at it. And I really wanted to get to this. I've been saving this. How are we going to make sure then in all of this data, in all of these implementations, how are we going to ensure that no matter what we're doing here, we're finding ways to do it safer for the guys out there on the road? I mean, I know that it's a difficult challenge because what do you do to make it different for the truck driver? What do you do to make it different for what the shipper believes and sees? And I think rarely does safety get put on the forefront in the technology space because we're working in a different type of mentality. But let me jump there, Chris. How do you see how safety can play a major, if not the most important role in these new advancements?
I think one, together is how we have to do it. I don't think there's just one company that is going to do it all. I think together in this industry, like as different products come in and companies compete and whatnot, like we all have kind of our differences, and together is how we're going to overcome the next pandemic, the next hurricane, the next whatever else the sun throws at us. And I think, like Kary mentioned earlier, something about an app that's downloaded the most, right? Like that's pretty incredible, and being able to reach drivers and at the right there that are actually in the trucks with maybe freight that they actually want, right? Like it's not just going to be a spot load that someone's just being really opportunistic for just to take it just because it's going to pay them 10 grand or whatever. But I think it's like giving them business that they want, at the same time serving the shipper and getting the freight moved, and at the end of the day getting the product on the shelf in a safe manner, where it could be a lane that the carrier that carrier runs that lane as a backhaul just to get back home, right? Like that. I think that match in itself is going to make it a much better experience for just everybody together, right? And if you can find different mediums and different channels to reach the right fit at the right price with the right load, the right match, that's, I think, how you can think about safety being at the forefront of the game.
Yeah, I like that because I think you're right. It's going to help alleviate stress. It's going to help alleviate, the more stress, the more fatigue, and the more fatigue, the more dangers out there. Yeah, Ed, what you got? You're raising your hand. I'm hoping your mic's working.
Yeah. I did us all the favor this time. I think the one piece that is really scary when it comes to safety is the pure liability around making recommendations. We're not dealing with fender benders. Like these are fatalities. These are major accidents. So if you're in the compliance game, if you're trying to figure out how to leverage data to reduce accidents or increase safety, like there's a lot of risk and a lot of liability for any company to step in to that world. So broadly speaking, I think one of the things that we really have to do as an organization or an industry is to figure out how to let these organizations leverage the data without this tremendous amount of risk. Like there are companies that have very deep pockets that are able to fund some of this. Like a perfect example is Tesla. Great, we want to enable the autonomous vehicle to drive by itself, and if there is an accident, chances are they could write a check and make it go away. These startups that have the ability to truly leverage data in an impactful way to drive meaningful change in the industry do not have those deep pockets. So somewhere there has to be a bridge that we're able to build to enable these folks rather than inhibit them and have this kind of cloud of fear lingering over their heads.
I think the fear of any of the liability and with more and more of the nuclear verdict and the tort law without reform is going to frighten a lot of people in this regard. However, I think at some point, if we want to make a change in this industry, we're going to have to put our pants on, our big boy pants on, and go after it and tackle this, because we're talking about people's lives. And at some point we've got to figure out what we can do. Kary, I haven't had a chance to throw the safety question your way. How do you see it that we as a group can figure out using this important data to save lives?
Yeah, I think it comes back to automation of tasks that cause distraction on the road. I think the general narrative around smartphones and tech in the world is that it's created this kind of generation of completely, totally, always distracted people. And what I'm hoping and where I could see this going in our space is as opposed to being distracted by that technology, it's actually a tool you have to set kind of in the background to do those tasks that would otherwise be distracting you, whether that's picking up a phone call and instead you're able to interact over a digital platform like any of, Cargo Chief, Neutral, Trucker Tools, whatever it is, or using an ELD to track again instead of, a track and trace call, having a couple of loads sent to you that would be good matches that you could book, as opposed to, scrolling through your phone and looking for a load while you're stressed out on the road trying to find a back call. So it's really using tech not as a tool to overwhelm you with more information about what's happening where and distracting, but using it as a tool to take care of the 20-30% of activities that are pretty manual and rote, so that you can use your brain power and focus on being alert, understanding where others are around you, and driving safe activity that way.
When and you talk about that, and I like how you mentioned the other groups. How can you guys as competitors in some sense create alliances to better the industry? And in what ways can you do that? In what ways have you done that? I'm just curious.
I think Ed hit it on the head earlier around integration. The more integrated we're all with each other, the more we're going to be able to reach the entire spectrum of carriers, brokers, shippers out there. Everyone's got a different platform they're using for whatever reason. They have, it really fits their needs. And the more that we can integrate and pass data back and forth in a really clean, simple way, the better decisions we're all going to be able to make.
There's no real, Ed, as we go and as we move forward, there's no real scary idea about us sharing the data, is there?
And depends on your business, probably. So I'm a huge fan of transparency and sharing the data that we're able to collect. I know that not all people share that same mentality, and when we talk to brokerage clients, there's a lot of folks just a very constrained example is a lot of brokerages don't want to share their data because it's intellectual property. It's the data that has become the foundation of their business, and they can't share carriers. They can't share pricing. They don't want their competition to know that. So I think that there is this kind of traditional legacy mindset that we don't want to share because we don't want to enable our competitors. And then there's another group of folks out there that know that data is going to drive innovation and move this industry forward at a much quicker pace. So we're certainly in that camp of being able to share data, buy data, sell data, create a transparent platform around pricing or whatever it may be. But I think the biggest variable there will be the mindset of the vertical and the companies that we're dealing with.
And as we go to that, and Chris, I just one last question, and as we talk about it, and we're talking about it, I don't see anything genuinely wrong with having transparency to know where my trucks are, know when they're going to be late, know how they're. I feel like a shipper has a better opportunity to align how it's going to unload or load if it knows when the trucks are going to get there in real time, not in hey, I'm supposed to be there at 8:30, but I'll be there at 9:15 and I think that also offers up to a safer environment. But when are we going to go directly to the shippers and the receivers and put them in the mix all the time in that shareable data space?
I would say it's kind of bouncing off of what Ed said. That there is some hesitation, and I think like the mindset of that company and organization. And I've seen over the last, I don't know, we've been up for, I don't know, call it 5 years or so, but like in the last, I think the pandemic really put that extra push and motivation for a lot of brokerage companies to share that data, to where it's like, if we're not doing this together, like, and they can see that the benefit outweighs the risk, then they're a lot more likely to share that information. And like I said earlier in the conversation, like the evolution of interpretation, I think now it'll start to spill off into, I mean, more carriers probably adopting like this technology, book it now, digital freight matching stuff, even the applications to automate some of their tasks, then into the shippers. Like, I mean, let's face it, a lot of shippers don't have a TMS. They've got, hey, can you move this load for me? Great, here it is. or email or what, it's it's antiquated technology that, I mean, if you call it technology, Outlook, I guess, but that's the way that the loads are being channeled through. And I think like it's really a mindset shift. Hopefully we don't have to go through another pandemic to do this. Like it took tracking, and Kary could probably speak more to this. Like when I started my career, it took, an arm and a leg to get a driver to accept on their phone, like, yeah, I'll be here. But it took 10 years in a pandemic to get drivers to actually accept that tracking technology. Today, it's like required, right? And carriers, drivers don't really have issues doing it. And it's like, I think when they see that the benefit outweighs the risk, that will start to shift the industry together. And again, all of us doing this together, speaking the same message, what will help that move along.
We are out of time. I just want to thank each of y'all for coming on. I know it's a quick discussion, but I think it's a much needed one. I think it's one that we're going to have to continue to talk about. If we have an opportunity, I hope to bring you guys back in at another time and continue to talk about this stuff. I do appreciate each of you coming out. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go through each one of you really quick, state who you are again, and how to reach out to you to get a hold of your platform. Kary, you want to lead the way? Ladies first.
Sure. Appreciate that. Sure thing. I'm Kary Jablonski with Trucker Tools, and you can find me on LinkedIn or email me kjablonski@truckertools.com.
Thank you. Ed.
Yeah, Ed Stockman, co-founder, CEO of Neutral. Feel free to find me on LinkedIn or sales@neutral.com.
All right. And go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Chris Arredondo, co-founder, VP here at the Chief. LinkedIn's a pretty good way, or cargochief.com, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks, everybody, again. And thanks for joining us on BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.